And here we can see my CV axle boot has finally got a tear in it.
Hello and welcome back to Off-Road Toyota Exploration. My name is Kai and this is my 2017 Toyota Tacoma. What is one of the biggest issues when lifting a CV axle vehicle? It's tearing those CV boots because they're going to be riding at a higher angle and rubbing against each other. So today we're going to replace the boots on my original factory CV axles. I had the boots rip on those because they were rubbing against each other. They lasted a really long time while being lifted. So the stock ones are obviously really good, but they're just not made to ride at that angle. So we got some replacement ones here from DOBINSONS. These ones are designed to be at a higher angle. So I'll go ahead here and do a review of these. I'm gonna get them installed on my factory axles. It comes with two different kits. One is the inside boot, and one is the outside boot. Got the two different part numbers here. And what comes in each kit is two boots. So you'll have two outside boots and then two inside boots. And these will come. These are designed to have a little more space in between the things so they can be at a more extreme angle without those ribs rubbing against each other, causing the CV boot to tear, letting all the grease out. Looks like we've got some good ridges here for the clamps to go in on. So here we've got the two separate boots. Each packet also comes with some replacement CV grease. This, I believe, is going to be enough to top off the CV axle, but if you do full clean on each joint, I think you'll need some more grease than this. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully that's enough. And then each bag is also going to have these clamps in there. These are going to be used to tighten the boots back onto the CV axles around the edges here. And then to tighten those up, we'll need this special tool. I've never used one of these, so we'll see how it goes. But essentially use this to tighten it up, and then you fold it over, and that should do the trick. So I've got my these are the boxes from the CV axles that I put on as replacement. These are just cheap ones from the auto parts store to put on in the meantime while I get my factory ones fixed. So there's nothing wrong with the axles. Super strong, much more reliable than those cheap aftermarket ones from the auto parts store. But obviously these ribs here run very close together, and then when they rub against each other, they're gonna cause a tear and let out the grease. So today we're gonna remove these boots, replace them, put on the new clamps, put in new CV grease, and hopefully these will be good to go. These lasted a long time even while being lifted. The new ones that I put on were these import direct ones. They're a good direct fit, easy to install, but they also already started leaking because of the boots rubbing against each other. So this will be a nice upgrade hopefully and fix that issue, and we don't have to worry about that anymore, and we can still run our factory CV axles. So let's start by getting the CV axle cleaned up and taken apart, and then we'll look at the process of replacing the boots. Alright, so this is the factory axle I took off because the outside boot, the inside boot tore on this one. And when I was pulling it off the vehicle, I accidentally pulled the boot off as well. So, which some people, when you replace it, you could also just take the boot off. You can leave the axle inserted in the diff and then take this off, replace the boots on it, and then when you put it back on, you just put the boot back onto the vehicle with this in there. Might be a little bit easier to put it back together with this being off the vehicle, but we took it off. We put some new axles on in the meantime, and then we're going to get these fixed. So this is how the axle sits together. Here we have the inside of the CV axle. We'll have to go in there and make sure that there's no dirt in there. And then leave that on the side for right now. And here we have the bearings that sit inside there. So luckily it doesn't look like there's any water that got in here. It doesn't seem to be any rust or anything. Bearings all seem to be good and greased up. So we're gonna leave all that grease on there and then get these boots off. We'll first have to start by taking off this boot. Well, first we'll have to start by removing the bearings here, this head. Then we can slide the boot off, then we can take this boot off, and then we'll start in reverse order, putting this boot back on, then sliding this boot on, and then lastly we can put the inside of the CV axle back on. So we'll start by removing this boot, and then we can take this piece off. Put this in the vise here, put something around it, not to damage the axle. There we go. And this is going to be quite a messy job, so we'll need lots of towels. So the way that these bearings sit in here, there's a clip in here that holds the axle on, and there'll be a little gap in the clip over here. And essentially it needs to be pressed apart, and then this whole piece can slide off. Some pliers that we can use to push the clip apart and then remove it. There we go. Put the clip here. Try and leave as much grease on these bearings as possible. Make sure that we have enough with those bags that are provided. This kit does not come with replacement clips. I believe the factory ones might. It's not a bad idea to replace them, but this also still looks like it's in good condition, and we will reuse that. So we'll put that on the side here, and then we need to try and slide this whole piece off. Don't think that will just easily come off. I need to hammer it off a little bit. So we'll start by removing the old boot, and then we'll have some more space and we can try and hammer this off. So let's do that. So to remove this, we'll start by cutting off the clip. bottom clip, I'll use a flathead screwdriver and try and pry it open a little bit. Should be able to get in there with our snips. There Alright, and then we'll take a razor blade, cut the boot open, take that off. There we go. You can see the old boot. It was torn over here, allowing grease to come out. So, that one is all done. You see on the inside here, quite thick rubber, but over the time that wears out, especially being at those extreme angles, it's just gonna do a lot more wear. So I'm gonna clean the grease off of here because it'll come off anyways when we slide the new boots on and the old one off. And then here you can also see the groove where the boot's gonna sit, get clamped on. So now we need to try and slide this up and off of here. It's got little splines where it's sitting in. And so first I'm gonna try and knock it down a little bit just to loosen it, and then try and tap it up with a hammer, bring it up. I'm just going to put a rag over it and then tap it with a hammer. Just try and hold everything together. Seems like it's starting to move up. It's definitely starting to move, so see here, axle is starting to recede in there. It's moving up, so that's good. There we go. Keep that all together in one rag, facing down. That way we know exactly that it goes back on again. Have it. So now we have this side, the inside of the axle off and the boot. So now the next step, I'm gonna take the lower boot and have to remove the clamps as well, take the boot off, and then be able to slide the new boot on. So we'll turn the axle around and do that. So I'm actually just inspecting the axle here on the outside portion. This is where the wheel hub goes, and this boot actually still looks very good. There's no rubbing or anything on this side, so I don't think it's worth cutting it all open and replacing it. It's lasted for over 100,000 miles, and most of those were lifted. So this side of the axle seems to be really strong, and I don't think it's necessarily to cut that open and replace it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just replace this side, the inner side of the CV axle boot, and leave the outside intact. Let me have a look at the other axle and see if that's the same. Here we have the other CV axle, and this one is the same. The outside boot is all good. We can see here it had the same issue as the other one on the inside, where it tore right around the base there. So we'll go ahead and replace just the inner ones, and we'll leave the outside ones as is. So that'll make this job a lot easier. Don't have to worry about removing these, getting them put back on, and replacing grease and everything. Everything should be nicely sealed in there and good to go for many more miles. Get this put back in here. Like so. And then you can go ahead with a new boot. So if we're only going to be replacing the inner boot, you can tell the difference from the inside. Let's see how these ones will match up to line up on there when it gets installed. The other one, the outside ones are going to be round. So this part number for the inner boots is going to be this CV59-557K. It's going to be for the inner boots. And so we'll start by putting on the clamps so that we don't have to worry about getting those over the boot once it's on. And then we just need to slide this all the way down into this groove. There we go. It slides nicely into place. And now we'll start by putting on this clamp. Essentially, I just need to pull this piece in as far as possible. And then we need to use our fancy tool. Let's see how this needs to get tightened. So essentially, this needs to go in here and get tightened onto that. Not sure if that's supposed to go under there. Like so. I'm not sure. And then I believe, yeah, so I think that's how it goes. It needs to go in underneath this piece, because once you're done and flip it over, I believe that's going to cut it right where it needs to go. And then this down here just gets used to tighten it up. So we'll see how that goes. Double check and make sure the boot is in the right place. Clamp is in the right place. Let's see. I'm not sure that thing is long enough to get in there to get tightened properly, but as we're tightening it, it pulls it in a little bit more each time. So hopefully now we have enough there that it's going to fold over itself and tighten it. Let's try one more time. And get as much through there as we can. Does. if that's tight enough. The hammer here. Bring that in. Quite sure if that's tight enough. Seems to be pretty tight, but I have some movement on there. So, yeah, don't think that was tight enough. Hopefully now we'll have some extra clamps because we're going to use all the boots. So let's try again with another clamp. In this case, we have some other clamps that we can try and use. Okay, try number 2 with this clamp style. Alright, let's try that again. Got the boot set in the groove over here, and we've got our clamp. Essentially, we need to try and pull out as much slack as possible. Try and use some pliers. Get as long as possible. And then we'll go again. So this goes, this piece here uses at the end, you fold this over to cut the piece. Well, actually it goes in like that, and then when you fold it over it cuts it. So this needs to go in through here, the whole piece. We need to have enough material here for it to fold in over itself and tighten itself. Just gonna try and tighten that a little bit more before we use the tool, just to make sure we have enough material there for it to pull on. Like this, underneath, and through there. Tighten that up. Keep that in there. Just wants to slide back out. Keep sliding out from here because it's not long enough to fold over itself. Try and shear it off. Again. Fold that over. seem that tight on there. I'm not sure if that'll be enough to keep it in place. Seems like it's holding it on there pretty well. Doesn't want to slide off anymore. There should be enough to keep the grease in there, keep it from coming out. Just tap it a bit more, make sure. Doesn't come undone. There we go. Alright, so now what we need to do is put the gear back on there and then fill it with grease and put the other side of the axle back on. Alright, now we have the clamp on here. Seems pretty tight on there now. We'll go ahead put back bearings. Same way that we took it off, so it didn't move anything. Slide it down. Need to make sure it goes all the way down so we can get the clip back in. See if we can get that clip in there. Try not to throw it on the floor. Cleaned up. Go. Make sure it's nicely seated in that groove. And we're good to go. So that's set back in there. From here you can kind of see how the bearings are going to align with that boot and with the outer inner part of the axle. So now what we're going to need to do is cover this in grease and fill it up and then put the inner part of the axle on. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our CV grease and put it all inside of the boot here. Try and get it spread out over the grease, over the bearings and everything as well. That way gravity's going to hold it in there. Should be good to go. Looks like we have a nice little thing there, so you can just cut it and then use that to squeeze it out. Cut it right there. And we'll go ahead. corner there. Go ahead. Fill it up with the grease. Alright, I'm just going to use some of the axle grease from the other kit that we have. Just to be sure, make sure there's enough grease in there. There you go. So, 2 packets of grease in there. I think that'll just help just because we got all of the grease out of there earlier. It'd be better to replace it all, so should be good. And now we'll go ahead and insert, kind of see again how these fit with each bearing goes into each one of these slots, and then that slides nicely over the boot and gets into place. Gonna bottom out right where it needs to sit on top of that boot. There we go. And now all we need to do is tighten our clamp around here. We'll be good to go. So it's going to be perfectly sealed. There's going to be a vacuum in there. Apparently it's a good idea to put a little pinhole somewhere to make sure that there isn't a vacuum. I'm not 100% sure where that pinhole needs to be. So we'll get the other boot replaced as well on the other axle, and then we'll look into getting that pin hole made to make sure that the axle can move freely and it doesn't have that vacuum in there. So there we go. So here we have axle number 2, and we're going to do the whole process again. Start taking off top clamp. Go. Some grease coming out here. All right. Same thing with the bottom clamp. This one's a bit easier. Alright, here you can see in the little clip pry that apart. And we can slide that off. Keep it all together like that, upside down, and then we know we just put it right back on like that. Now we can go ahead and put on our clamps again. Put the CV boot on. This one we're going to put 2 packets of grease in there as well. So we don't have to worry about trying to do it. If the bearing's in the way, we'll do the first one like this before we put the bearing back on. And then put the other one in once we have the bearings on there. Get everything nice and lubed up. Alright, so that brings us to the end of our job. It wasn't quite as difficult or as messy as I expected it to be. Here we got the 2 axles. As I decided, I'm just going to keep the stock boots on here for the outside boot. These ones are still in great condition and there's no tears or anything, or even where it looks like it might be tearing soon. So I'm really happy with those, so I'm just going to keep them as is, nicely greased and sealed, so no need to worry about that. And then we changed out the boots here on the inside. Still need to figure out about putting a pinhole in or something, just to make sure that the pressure can equalize and there's no vacuum in there. If you have any info on that, please leave that in the comments below. I'll go ahead and get these installed back on the truck. I do have some spare axles that are also OE grade that I carry with me whenever I go off-roading, and so I'll have those as spares, and then I'll put these ones back in, and then the cheap ones that I bought, I'm not sure if I'll keep those or I'll have a look at them, see how they look, maybe just get rid of them. But yeah, these boots look good. Make sure they have enough space to do what they need to do, and then hopefully they'll last a long time. We'll see. I'll definitely report back on these if I have any issues, or just to see how they run. So, the boots that we installed are the CV59557K. These are the inside boots. These are the outside ones that we did not install. I'm glad that I had these though, just for those additional clips, and then also to have that additional grease. So if you're doing this job and just getting one, or even if you do 2, I'd recommend getting some extra CV grease, just to make sure you can put enough in there. And then the tools that we used, this is a C-clamp spreader. So that's very helpful, and you'll need that to take the seat clamp off, especially trying to preserve it and make sure you can use it again. Some tin snips, very useful to cut off the old clamps. Pliers are helpful, and then a hammer too. knock in the bearings off and on again. If you're doing those clamps that come with it, you'll need this tool. Not quite happy with how that all turned out. I think the clamps are on there good and they're going to hold up, but I think there are a better way. This tool that I got from Amazon with this, I'll link that down below. And it comes with these other clamps. I'm not sure if they're a different style. They're for this clamp here. I'm not sure if they're much better. Just the way that the teeth go on those. I'm not sure that's the best way. But yeah, if you want to look at getting some other clamps, might be a good idea. Just to get some more confidence in those. But otherwise, yeah, you'll need lots of shop towel. These are some microfiber towels. They're quite disposable, but they do a great job. And that's really nice as well. But yeah, the job wasn't as greasy or as messy as I thought. But we got it done. And I'll get those axles installed again. If you want to see a video on how to remove and install the axles, I'll link that up at the top. And then we'll get these back installed and I'll report back if there's any issues with them or if I like them or so. So thank you very much for watching. Get out there and explore, but don't forget to tread lightly. Cheers.